never met a person named Judas. Never heard of a pregnant mother mulling that name over for her expectant child. Judas is a name that has been permanently stained. He's the obvious villain, slipped away from the original communion table to sell out the one breaking the bread and pouring the wine. How could he? After all he's seen, all he's heard. What misconception must he have carried silently all these years? What seething resentment must he have fostered? What moment did he feel so forgotten, so excluded, so unloved that it had come to this? What lie had the deceiver contorted in his imagination until it grew into distrust this demonstrable? When Judas abruptly left in the middle of the meal, they assumed he'd gone out to make an offering to the poor. After all, he was the treasurer. He'd always run the books. And on the first night of Passover, it's tradition to make an offering to the poor. It made sense he'd go to give, to make sure that all the rituals were observed. In reality, he went out to collect money for the life of the rabbi, the life of the Savior, the King of Kings, disguised in peasant rags, sold for a handful of shekels. Judas may be the obvious villain, but he is certainly not the only villain. Couldn't you stay awake with me, even for an hour? In anguish, presence speaks so much louder than words. When we are grieving, hurting, dreading, the presence of a friend speaks louder than the most eloquent consolation. And it was just that, the presence of a friend, that Jesus lacked. When Jesus prayed for the strength to surrender his will, Peter sharpened his sword for the assumed battle. John snoozed. James's distracted mind wandered. Not a single one of them, not a single one of us, able to remain present to the God who is ever present to us. If the parable of the prodigal son had taught them nothing else, surely they remembered this much, that it is just as possible to betray the father from his own house as it is to run off to the pigsty. Couldn't you keep watch with me, even for an hour? How many times did that brief exchange replay in Peter's imagination in the next 72 hours? How many times did James or John wish they could go back and kneel there next to him in the garden, but they couldn't? They'd betrayed him, however quietly. Within 24 hours, they'd all been the one to dip the bread in the bowl. All betrayed him in one way or another. All sold him for the currency of their own honor, comfort, convenience. All disgraced the name at which every knee will bow to keep their own names unstained. And we've all followed suit. All dipped our own hands into the bowl of betrayal. All stained his name to keep ours clean. In the words of Frederick Buechner, Judas is only the first in a procession of betrayers 2,000 years long. If Jesus were to exclude him from his love and forgiveness to one degree or another, he would have to exclude us all. At the very table that Judas tipped his hand by dipping it into the bowl, Jesus offered his life as broken bread, his blood as shared wine for all of his loud and quiet betrayers, no matter how dramatic or subtle our offenses. A table that Jesus told his followers to pass on from generation to generation to remember. Remember what we're all so prone to forget, that it's his costly forgiveness, not my squeaky cleanness, that makes me fit to sit and feast forever at his table. Tonight, you have not come to reflect on an old story, but a current one, a story you are very much living in. A story you are invited, before we read another word of it, to become a participant within. All among us who are honest enough to admit that they too are in that long procession of betrayers behind Judas, all willing to say, I too have dipped my hand in the bowl of betrayal, are invited to come now to Jesus' table, where you will instead dip your hand in a cup of forgiveness.